Accessing peace. Existing without violence, with the ability to calmly resolve conflict. Downloading love. An overwhelming, deep, positive affection towards others. Activating liberty. Living your life as you see fit without infringing on the lives of others.
Welcome to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. I am your host, Darryl W. Perry, the Liberty Penguin, the Wombat, the uncut cocaine of libertarianism. And I'm joined, I know that this is something that's unusual, being joined by someone. I am joined by Mr. Rodger Paxton. And Rodger, you look a little confused. That's because even though we're not recording on my laptop, I still, out of habit, hit the record button
on the
laptop.
I was wondering.
Yeah, just out of habit. We're recording actually on some device thing that you have that I'm not really sure.
It's
exactly
a Zoom
what
H5 digital recorder.
Zoom H5 digital recorder. We're doing this because, well, I forgot to bring extra 9-volt batteries, so the batteries in my mixer are dead, and I thought I had another cable that would plug into my laptop, but I did not. But luckily, there's another audio technician, engineer here in the studio, the mobile studio, right. That's kind of not actually the mobile setup that I'm used to at all. Where are we? And what are we doing here?
We are at the Radisson Hotel in beautiful Manchester, New Hampshire for the Liberty Forum.
Yes, and I almost thought Porcupine Freedom Festival, but that's
right.
Because tomorrow is actually Porcupine Day.
It is the first annual
day of February, which comes right after Groundhog Day. And apparently Puxatawny Phil saw the shadow, so 6 more weeks until spring. But if he didn't, then it would still be 6 more weeks until spring because it's the same thing.
I saw on Facebook that Hillary Clinton saw her shadow too, so there's going to be 6 more weeks of riots.
I thought that just meant that she wasn't shoved in the hole far enough.
Right, that might be, yeah.
And do we know if Donald Trump saw his shadow? Will there be 6 more years of drone bombs?
He probably saw the shadow of his hair. That's probably the best he could do.
So, Rodger Paxton, the host of the Lava Flow podcast, I was actually on your show a long time ago. I don't think you've ever been on mine.
I never have. You were on my show before I moved to New Hampshire even. Back when you were running for president, had you on the show, and this is my first time on yours. But you have recorded your show in my studio a couple
Yes,
of times.
I have. I did record a couple of FPP radio news from the Lava Flow studios of the Free Coast of New Hampshire. Yes. And you've actually got new studios.
I do. So we moved from Rochester, which we were renting at in New Hampshire when we first moved here. Now we're living in Milton, New Hampshire. And I just set up my new studio for Pax Libertas Productions, which is the podcast network studio company that I'm running.
Yeah, so what is Pax Libertas Productions? I'm somewhat familiar with it, but my listeners might not be.
So Pax Libertas is a podcast network company that I started a few months ago, and we have 3 podcasts on it now. We have my show, The Lava Flow. We have the
the Lava Spurt.
And the Lava Spurt, right. Then we have the Free Coast Freecast, which is a local New Hampshire Free Coast area podcast. And we have a podcast from a couple of good guys down in Alabama called the ANCAP Barbershop. He's a barber, the main host, and he's an ANCAP, and it's a great show. Definitely check that one out, ancapbarbershop.com. And those are the first 3. We're working on another project with a good friend of ours, actually, that'll hopefully be out in the next month or 2.
And it's something that I will not spill the beans on what it
Please
is,
don't.
But I was told the rough idea. And I'm not necessarily a fan of the genre that will be covered, but I'm interested in hearing the podcast.
You heard it here, folks, first. Darryl Perry is not a libertarian. That must be the genre he's talking about.
No, there's a subgenre sort of thing. Like if somebody started up a libertarian sports podcast, right. There are people, they're like, I'm not a fan of sports ball. I'm not going to listen to that.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
here's a hint. It's not sports ball, and I actually am a fan of sports ball.
Well, and that's part of what Pax Libertas wants to do is all of the shows are going to be libertarian-based. Some minarchist, probably mostly anarchist, but they're all going to be filling a niche that isn't being filled in the libertarian community. And that's kind of what the next one is going to be specifically. Certainly don't want to get into the weeds on it, but definitely keep looking out for it. You can hear all the news on Facebook at the Lava Flow or Pax Libertas Productions on Facebook, and we'll definitely.
And speaking of weed, apparently yesterday was a big day for weed in New Hampshire.
It was, and guns.
Guns and weed.
Yep.
The Road to Freedom.
Right, great. Yeah.
Available at Amazon.com and probably most places that movies are sold. Right. But yeah, so I do a fair amount of work in the legislative process. I am a registered lobbyist.
And I am one of your donors.
Yes, you are. You're a member of the Founders Committee.
Yes, very proud of that.
You can find out more about what I do at libertylobby.info. And one thing that I did not do, because, I want to be as effective as possible, and that means not going to where there's already a lot of people standing around to testify.
Right.
So I was not at the guns or the weed bills because there's enough people there already.
We had plenty of Liberty folks that were already in line for those. Absolutely. Matter of fact, a guy that works for me asked for the day off just so he could go testify at those. I was like, absolutely. I can't do it. Go for it.
And so the bills that were being heard, the gun bill was to implement what they call constitutional carry and actually broaden the scope of who is able to get a concealed carry permit if they want one.
Right.
Right now, the law in New Hampshire specifies suitable persons. But the term suitable is not defined anywhere in statute, so it leaves it up to interpretation of the police chief.
It was the same way in Arkansas when I came from there. They had a journey clause for being able to carry openly, and you had to be on a journey, but it was not defined in statute either. So that's how they try to get you.
Life is a journey.
Right.
Or as, who was the singer? Life is a Highway.
Life, yeah.
Tom Cochran.
Yes, I'm not going to say
Cochran. Life is a highway. But, you're only on a highway if you're on a journey.
That's right.
Right? So it would expand to mean that everyone who is not otherwise prohibited by federal law from possessing a firearm would have the ability to get a concealed carry permit.
Right.
Which would be needed for reciprocity.
Right.
So if you want to travel to another state, then you would be able to conceal carry in those states. Would also allow people to conceal carry in New Hampshire without a permit, which would greatly expand Second Amendment rights, although we can discuss whether or not those rights come from the Second Amendment or not. Stay tuned. There's more here on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio.
In 2115 New England, there are no borders, no states, and no regulations, yet never has a more peaceful and prosperous place existed. But Mr. Drake's security company has seen better days. Faced with the prospect of waning power, Mr. Drake intends to replace the anarchy of New England with a government. But at what cost? Will anybody care? And can anyone stop him? Anarchy in New England by Joe Jarvis is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores. Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at weusecoins.com. That's weusecoins.com.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com.
Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. We'll get back into discussing guns and weed and other things with Rodger Paxton of the Lava Flow podcast and Pax Libertas Productions. But before we do, I want to make sure that I remind you about the wonderful people over at Roberts and Roberts Brokerage. For nearly 40 years, since 1977, Roberts and Roberts Brokerage has been a trusted source for buying and selling precious metals like gold and silver, and they take Bitcoin for precious metal purchases and have permanently removed the minimum purchase amount for all orders paid in the digital currency. So call Roberts & Roberts today for knowledgeable advice on buying and selling precious metals and a forward-thinking approach to new technologies. 800-874-9760. That's 800-874-9760. Or visit online at rrbi.co.
And I have actually purchased silver from them using Bitcoin before. It's such a simple process.
It's a simple process, and they are very quick on their delivery.
Very quick.
I've heard other people say that they wound up getting the order within like 2 days.
Yeah, I got mine in 3 or 4, but that was still fantastic, especially compared to some of the other places I bought silver from.
And, for sort of a frame of reference here, they're located in Florida. We live in New Hampshire,
right,
about 2,200 miles away.
Give or take, yeah.
So, that's a very fast turnaround to be able to get a product from the time you make payment until it's at your doorstep within the week.
Yeah.
Whether it's, 2 days or 4 days, that's still within a business week. Absolutely. That is absolutely amazing. rrbi.co. So we were discussing some of the legislative stuff, the guns and the weed. We didn't really get into what the weed things were. One of them would be to remove criminal penalties for at least the first time offense of possession. The other weed bill was a tax and regulate. And as I said, I was not in either of those hearings. I was in other committee hearings, being more effective as a lobbyist, but I heard that there was only one person that testified against the decriminalization.
Wow.
The one person that testified was a representative of the Catholic Archdiocese of Manchester, New Hampshire.
How funny. I heard that even the state police didn't. They did send a letter, from what I understand, saying that they're stating their opposition, but they did not send a representative.
They were not there to testify against the decrim.
Right.
Now, I believe they did testify against the tax and regulate.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm speculating here. But there's one of the big anti-drug groups called New Futures that argues against almost everything. They did not even testify against the decrim, partly because I think they know it's going to wind up passing anyway.
Right.
But they did say, we're not taking a position on this. So they got up to speak to say we're not taking a position, which seems to kind of be a waste of time and effort. Why not just go to one of the other committee hearings and, try to actually wind up making a difference.
Right.
And I totally spaced on where I was
You went to some of the other hearings.
Yeah, I did go to some of the other hearings, some of the election law related things. One of them would have modified what they call the challenged voter affidavit, which on its face doesn't sound that big of a thing.
Right.
However, snuck into this modification of the form was a change of voter requirements only for people filling out this document. That right now in New Hampshire, one only has to be domiciled, meaning you live here more than you live anywhere else. You do not have to be a resident, because New Hampshire residency law specifies that you must stay here for the indefinite future. If you have any plans of ever leaving to retire, or after I wind up finishing this job that I'm working on, I've got a contract for X number of years. When I'm done there, I'm going somewhere else. You are not a resident because you have a plan to leave.
Right.
So you have to live here for the indefinite future.
And you're domiciled here, correct?
I am a domiciliary of New Hampshire, and there are a lot of legal reasons behind that.
Sure.
But it would have changed to where anybody filling out a challenged voter affidavit would have to claim under oath that they were a resident, facing a possible sentence of 1 year incarceration and either a $2,000 or $5,000 fine, depending on what they are convicted of.
Wow.
And even the ACLU missed that change. So had I not been there, chances are this thing may have gone through. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I'm definitely, being able to be more efficient by not going to the really popular bills.
Well, and that's one thing about you is that you take the time to go through these bills very carefully. And, of course, you've been doing that for an HLA for many years. I don't have the patience for that. I mean, the way these things are written, the legalese, it's made specifically to slip stuff in. And you're good at catching it.
Yes. And, there was a bill a couple of years ago where they slipped in regulating convertible virtual currency. And that was not in the original wording of the bill. That got added in some kind of amendment, and I didn't catch the amendment. And there were, after this passed, somebody said, well, Darryl testified against this. But no, I was testifying on a completely different bill that did mention cryptocurrencies. And somehow, this thing slipped through and nobody noticed it until it became law.
Of course.
And, that's the way things work. So I wish that there were like 20 more of me to where we could cover every committee that we have.
Well, when you start getting more money, are you looking at adding more people on eventually?
Yes,
good.
Definitely. Good. So once I'm able to comfortably know that I can cover my expenses, then I will look to try to add somebody else that I could cover at the same level. And, I'm kind of cheap. So I don't know how soon it's going to be before I'm able to bring more people on to work with Liberty Lobby LLC. Now, you had mentioned about the Pax Libertas productions, and you're bringing on new shows. But let's tell the people about the Lava Flow. Now, you were a sponsor at one time, and I would ask people, if you're not listening, what's wrong with you? But what actually is the Lava Flow podcast? You've got time to think about it. We've got the music coming up. We're at the end of the segment. So when we come back, we will find out what is the Lava Flow podcast. And remember, we're radio friendly here on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio.
Are you sick of government lackeys who say you didn't build that? Are you tired of elitists who think you need a government permission slip for everything? Everything you do is an A to B conversation, and the government should see their way out of it. Create true free markets by adopting the BIPCOT No Government License. The BIPCOT No Gov license allows use or modification of any product, service, or software except by governments or government agents. Go to BIPCOT.org. That's Bravo, India, Papa, Charlie, Oscar, Tango.org.
Bitcoin Not Bombs is a launching pad for nonprofits and social entrepreneurs into the financial freedom of the Bitcoin economy. Bitcoin Not Bombs offers premium publicity campaigns designed to facilitate an organization's adoption of Bitcoin as a payment system. Bitcoin Not Bombs is fully committed to being the hub of the nonprofit sector of the Bitcoin economy, maximizing the potential cross-promotion of all our clients and commercial partners. To learn more, visit bitcoinnotbombs.com.
Hi, this is Rodger Paxton from the Lava Flow Podcast, the Free Coast Freecast, and Pax Libertas Productions, and you're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry.
Hey, welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. I am your host, Darryl W. Perry, the Liberty Penguin, the Wombat, the uncut cocaine of libertarianism. And why am I not answering questions? You might be thinking, why is Darryl not answering questions right now? It's Friday. It's supposed to be the Ask Me Anything.
Well, but why is Darryl not answering questions is a question.
Exactly. It is a question that I will answer. I'm not answering questions because, well, I'm on location, and I wanted to have Rodger on the show. I stopped doing interviews on a regular basis a couple of years ago, but I still love the interaction of other people. And, let's change things up every now and then. And, when you're on location, do something different, right? Absolutely. So, Rodger Paxton, the host of the Lava Flow podcast and the Lava Spurt, and also the genius behind Pax Libertas Productions. And, again, you had been an advertiser, and I would ask people, if you're not listening to the Lava Flow podcast yet, what is wrong with you? But I never actually gave them a reason that they should, other than it's a good podcast that comes out on a regular basis. So what is the Lava Flow podcast?
Lava flows. Lava stands for libertarian, anarcho-capitalist, voluntarist, agorist. And it's funny because I woke up in the middle of the night with that on my tongue at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I wrote it on my notepad that I always keep by my bed. So I start Googling lava the next couple of days, and I come across this lava, was it an awards something or other?
So there were the lava awards that were done by the Lava Authors and Publishers Association.
Right. So then I saw that your name was somehow associated with it. So I sent Darryl a message. I said, hey, I've had this idea, but you guys stole it before I had it. Can I use the name? So obviously I'm using the name.
I said, I don't believe in intellectual property.
Right.
Go ahead.
Right. So I started that podcast, 2 years ago now, a little over. I just talk about what's going on in the news. It's really kind of and also libertarian philosophy. So I start
What's
off
in the news?
Right. So I start off with what's wrestling by Jimmy.
apps.
That's my wife's voice. She hates it. So I start off with what's wrestling my jimmies that week. So in that episode, what is really upsetting me about either what's going on in the world or an idea that I just want to talk about in libertarianism.
So the
really
what's
bothers me.
rustling my jimmies is kind of the Rodger Paxton version of Peter Griffin's What Really Grinds My Gears.
Kind of, yeah. It's my rant for the week. And this past episode, it was on asset forfeiture, talking about civil and criminal asset forfeiture. And sometimes it's about things that are more recent in the news. Then I do what's in the news that actually really, talks about specific news items over the last couple of weeks. And then I throw in some, kind of rotating shows and cap apps that talks about specific phone or internet apps that you can use that have a perspective for libertarians. And then I do all kinds. I do a new segment, New Hampshire. It's like this too, where I talk about some of the things that are going on in New Hampshire.
And you always start the show because, we're broadcasting from New Hampshire.
Right.
You start the show by mentioning, from New Hampshire, where, and then a weird, interesting fact. Where do you find these facts?
So I started that in Arkansas from the very first show. I thought, that would be kind of a neat way to talk about where I'm from. And when I got to New Hampshire, of course, there's so much cool stuff. But I got most of the ones I've started on here from nhstatefacts.com, I think is the name of it,
okay.
Or something like that. But that's, I'm still going through that list. And then once I get through that list, then there's so many others out there that I can go to. So there's just so many cool facts.
And then there's, new things being passed all the time. So pretty soon you can say from New Hampshire, where the painted turtle is the official state reptile, because that's actually a bill for some reason. Because fourth graders, we have to pass this stupid stuff because of fourth graders.
Well, at least it's not the abortion falcon this time. Was it a falcon?
Oh, the raptor.
Raptor, right.
Yeah, and then Stephen Colbert had fun with that, where he was like, we'll make the red-tailed hawk the official raptor of the Colbert Report.
Right.
Raptor screech. And then he had, the weird raptor thing. Or whatever it was. Did I just kill your
Yeah,
ears?
that hurt.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I'm not hearing anything other than the bumper music through my headphones. So I often forget that, I get loud at times. And it's so funny on Free Talk Live because Ian is constantly turning me down a little bit. And then I can't hear myself in the headphones, so I get louder and he turns me down even more.
Right.
So a lot of weird facts about New Hampshire, but you mentioned apps. So some of the apps that you recommend for libertarians.
Right, and they can be security apps like Wire and Signal, or apps.
Cell 411.
Right, or apps that can just make your life easier, your day easier. Waze, I recommended at one point. And just, I've done, probably, 15 or 20 of those now.
So speaking of apps, and I'm not going to ask you about one that you've recommended or whatnot, what are your thoughts on the #DeleteUber campaign?
I think anybody can protest anything they want as long as it's peaceful. I don't have a personal issue with Uber. I've used them a couple of times, and it was a good service. But, if people want to, whatever.
Okay, so
care.
I'm going to, sort of poke the Aspie here for a second. Just because people can protest something, you can still have an opinion. Do you think it's a stupid protest?
I do, yes. And it's no different than the Starbucks protest over a stupid cup. It's no different. It's
well,
ridiculous.
now people are protesting Starbucks because Starbucks said that they're willing to hire 10,000 immigrants.
Oh, I haven't heard this one. Oh, my goodness.
So, yeah, there's the, boycott Starbucks, and then Uber. People are delete Uber because Uber didn't take part in the 1-hour taxi strike that happened last Saturday.
1 hour. That is so funny.
So what happens if you take a Uber to a Starbucks, dude, like the left-right paradigm, does that just implode upon itself? Right. Stay tuned. Closing moments of Peace, Love, Liberty Radio coming up here on FTPradio.com.
Cell 411 is a free app for Android and iOS that replaces government-controlled 911. Cell 411 allows you to preset a group of friends or private organizations to show up in any emergency. Cell 411 is a nightmare for the state because it proves their so-called services aren't needed. Cell 411 has had thousands of installs, and of course it's covered by the BIPCOT no government license. Cell 411 because your friends won't shoot you when you're in trouble. Without the government, who would build the emergency services? You and Cell 411. Get it today at getcell411.com. That's getcell411.com.
When you hear the word lobbyist, you probably think about greedy corporations, but not all lobbyists are the same. Some are fighting for the freedoms you hold dear. Liberty Lobby LLC is doing just that in New Hampshire, working hard to represent you, not some special interest group. You can help by going to libertylobby.info, where your contribution will give us the tools we need to ensure that your voice is heard. Visit libertylobby.info today to find out more.
You're listening to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio with Darryl W. Perry.
Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Don't delete us. Don't delete us. We're not doing anything delete-worthy. We're boycotting all of the boycotts. We're boycotting all of the strikes. We're striking against the boycotts and, all of the things. Secede from all of the things and nullify all of the things. That's basically where we stand,
well,
right?
Sure, and that's just how people. If you have a problem with something these days, and this is coming from the left, we're supposed to be tolerant, right? We're supposed to tolerate things that we don't understand and that are different from us. Not so much,
right? And I think you might be referring to, and maybe you're referring to something completely different. But there was the thing at UC Berkeley recently where some people got upset that the gay racist Milo Yiannopoulos was going to speak, and that just sort of turns him into some sort of free speech martyr.
Right.
He's not an advocate for liberty. Quit thinking that because he's a gay guy that gets protested that somehow he's a bastion of liberty. He's actually spoken out against libertarians.
He has, and he while he does say a lot of things that I agree with, he also says a lot of things that disgust me.
Right.
He is. In a lot of ways, he's a disgusting human being. I want nothing to do with the man personally.
Right. And, since we're libertarians, often people on the right will say some things that we agree with.
Right.
And a lot of things that we don't. And people on the left will say some things that we agree with and a lot of things that we don't.
Right.
But luckily, again, we're libertarians and we now have party status in New Hampshire.
We do.
Meaning that we can actually, fairly easily get on the ballot in a year and a half.
And we didn't even mention that you're the chairman of the LPNH and I'm the vice chair of the LPNH. So
we've got another member of the executive committee in the room where we are recording.
Right.
But I swear this is not an illegal meeting of the executive committee.
Shh! Don't tell anybody.
Well, this is broadcasting, or it's not broadcasting live, but it's recorded live, and I don't go through and edit. And that's a big difference about the way we do our shows.
Right.
To where the lava flow, you'll do like a 30-minute show that you've gone through and done heavy editing on.
I do, because I am not I'm not nearly as good live as I am to where I can clean my stuff up. I know that I can make those mistakes because I could just go back and clean it up. So I want my show to be as easy to listen to as possible, and that's why I do that.
Right. And, there are different ways that different people do different shows. I am, much more a fan of the authentic thing, and I would rather have something that is real and authentic. Not that, record or editing isn't authentic, because I edit a 5-minute newscast every day.
Right.
So, there's different things for different people. Where can people find you?
thelavaflow.com.
And don't forget, every Friday I answer your questions. Send those AMA at fppradio.com.
The podcasts of FPP Radio are licensed under Copy Heart. We believe that copying is a form of flattery and do not abide by the copyright laws. Those laws serve to restrict the flow of ideas which no one can really own. Copying is an act of love. Love is not subject to law. If you enjoy the show, consider joining the Fans program and get perks like ad-free versions of Peace, Love, Liberty Radio and FPP Radio News, and also get a copy of the monthly newspaper FPP News. To learn more or to join the Fans program, visit fans.fppradio.com.